Well, you're gonna laugh, but when this guy is playing well in the NFL, in a few years, that'll get cropped, Pez. So you keep laughing, son.
He called Tariq Woolen before Tariq Woolen was even a thing. So everyone the man knows cornerback.
One corner that you could handpick and put in a Seahawks uniform out of this class. Is there a clear favourite for you?
I had a couple of fucking episodes, right, where I got a few names mixed up. But you two rolling your eyes.
A couple of episodes.
Fucking talk about supporting podcasts, the three fucking devilish duo. I even got that wrong. And you two just roll your fucking eyes at me.
Ladies and gentlemen, Seahawks and football fans everywhere, a very warm welcome back to the We Talk Seahawks podcast. I hope you're all doing well. Congratulations if you've listened through our entire draft series. You have reached the conclusion of our Spotlight Position Breakdown podcast. You have reached the cornerbacks/safeties podcast. So I hope you've enjoyed all the other breakdowns we've done. If this is your first one tuning in, feel free to tune back to the other position groups that we've done. But tonight we are concluding with the defensive backs, the corners and the safeties in this class. Obviously, an area of need as well for the Seahawks. As always, we always like to take a good corner and a safety. So I'm sure there's plenty of names in here that have a good shout of being a Seahawk in the very near future that we're going to be talking about tonight. I know we've all got certain my guys in this room. I'm very keen to talk about a certain prospect. But as always, I can't do it without these lads. So, Positive Pez, as you sip your tango, how are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. Good.
Good.
That's all I got for you.
That's all you've got for us. Well, I'll prelude this, listeners, because Pez has already, thrown a comp our way on a player he likes that the comparison is pretty bullshit.
Absolute bullshit.
Whoa. You're going to try to throw me under the bus at the start of the podcast? I never said I liked him. I said, I just think everyone should watch out in the late rounds, undrafted guys. This guy is going to pop up. Don't start with me right now. Do not start with me right now. I'm full of pizza and he'll leave me for an ice. Give me a fucking break.
That's the quote of the night. Josh, how are you, mate?
I'm brilliant. My night's just been made up. I've just had a hit flask from my wedding. That's still got rum in it, so that'll get me through the pod. Mainly it'll get me through Pez trying to pronounce names. Anyone that's listened to the previous pods will know that's been a thing. But I'm also looking forward to what Mitch has to say because we're going to be leaning on him heavily for this, and we've got a few names that we want to chuck at him.
Well, Mitch, how are you, mate? Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm good. Ready for that challenge. Really looking forward to the draft. If anything, over the last couple of days, we've seen a lot of rumours come out about who's going at the top, and I feel like every rumour that comes out at the top of the draft at the moment is really reshaping the picture of what our draft looks like, because it all starts with who we pick at 5. So, yeah, I think I'm ready to look an idiot when all of my predictions and everything I say on the pod is, screwed up and thrown out. But otherwise, very excited for this week. Yeah.
Well, we all run the risk of looking like fools when it comes to the draft, so you're not the only one, mate. We're certainly no genies ourselves, as you'll find out tonight, listeners. Because we're going to start with my guy. I've been gagging and desperate to talk about this guy ever since we started. So don't give me that look, Pez, you dirty bastard. I've been dying to talk about this guy since we came on tonight. Since we've been doing these prospect breakdowns, I couldn't wait for the cornerbacks because I have to talk about Kelee Ringo, the cornerback out of Georgia. I cannot for the life of me understand why this guy is getting so underhyped, why he's falling down draft boards, and it actually annoys me. I'm actually really annoyed. So I'm going to try and tone my anger levels down when I'm talking about Kelee Ringo, because it's going to sound like I hate him when I don't. I absolutely love him. I just don't like what's happening to him. Kelee Ringo is 20 years old, right? He's played 2 years of college football at Georgia. He's not he's not coming into this draft as a 4-year player like a Devon Witherspoon or someone else. He's played 2 years of college football. And all you hear when you hear about Kelee Ringo, he's raw. He's got so much to improve. There's weaknesses. He's raw. Of course he's going to be. He's 20 years old. He's played 2 full college seasons and he's already as good as he is. I look at the raw debate for me always winds me up because it makes no sense to me. He's 20 years old. He was playing in 2020 as an 17, 18-year-old for Georgia. Of course he's going to be raw. Of course he's going to make mistakes. But look at the positives. The guy is 210 pounds, 6'2", 6'3". He looks like a safety, yet he runs a legit 4-3, a legit 4-3, by the way. There is no athlete at the cornerback position in this class, in my opinion, like Kelee Ringo. And people, when you watch him, and well, not when you watch him, when you watch people talk about him, often a lot of people who haven't actually really watched him will just and it seems like people just sort of take the bait and go, oh, Kelee Ringo, yeah, he makes mistakes, he can't cover, he just relies on his speed, everything like this. Well, I'll let me put some numbers to you because the guy can cover. It's such a lazy argument to Kelee Ringo. Kelee Ringo can absolutely cover. In 2020, after he redshirted his first year, Kelee Ringo, due to a torn labrum. So in 2021, he played 797 snaps at cornerback for Georgia, 31 tackles, 7 assists, 8 stops in coverage, 4 pass breakups, 2 interceptions, and an impressive quarterback rating of 63.2. Now in 2022, that quarterback rating when targeted went up to 69.8, but that's still very good. For just a bit of context, right? Devon Witherspoon, pretty much everyone's cornerback 1 so far in this class. In 2021, Junior Witherspoon, he played in 10 games, 740 snaps, so practically the same amount of snaps as Ringo. His quarterback rating when targeted was 86.9, right? That's Devon Witherspoon. In 2021, for Christian Gonzalez, because it was better slightly in 2022, but in 2021, Christian Gonzalez, a lot of people's top cornerback as well, cornerback 1, cornerback 2 between him and Witherspoon. He played 811 snaps for Oregon. His quarterback rating when targeted was 90. It was 74.7 in 2022. And how about Joey Porter Jr. as well? What about a quarterback rating when targeted for Joey Porter Jr. of 84.7 in 2021 and 63.6 in 2022? So to this illusion that Kelee Ringo can't cover when the quarterbacks throw his way, he gets beat all the time. He can't. Absolute rubbish, bullshit. Kelee Ringo can cover his arse off. Yes, he makes mistakes, and I'll say it again. He's 20 years old. He's only played 2 years of college football, like exactly what we're saying with Anthony Richardson for Florida, the quarterback, how you can forgive him because he's raw. Everyone's prepared to give Anthony Richardson time, yet when it comes to Kelee Ringo, people just want to crucify him and say he's crap now and he's never going to be good and he's too raw. Let him go to a system like the Seattle Seahawks. Yeah, if he goes to Detroit, where they couldn't buy a cornerback and couldn't coach up a cornerback for the sake of their franchise, if their franchise was on the line, there's no other team in the NFL that drafts and coaches up developmental cornerbacks better than the Seattle Seahawks. And to put the cherry on the top, he's a Tacoma native right here from Seattle. It makes too much sense. If John Schneider does not put a Seahawks cap on that man this weekend, we will forever regret it, because I'm telling you, Kelee Ringo comes to the Seahawks, you have a Pro Bowl All-Pro cornerback in the making. I'm just putting it out there now. Forget your Devon Witherspoons, forget your Christian Gonzalez. If this guy reaches his potential, which if he comes to the Seahawks, it's the best place for him to reach that potential. He's got the best chance of reaching it if he comes to the Seahawks. I think there's every chance he's the best cornerback in this class, and people are going to be too scared to take him because they're just buying into this raw, can't cover, mistakes. Just whichever team take, whether it's the Seahawks or not, I applaud you, because you're gonna get a hell of a prospect. I'm just sick of the hate. I'm sick of the misinformed hate Kelee Ringo's getting. So if anyone would like to disagree with me and put forward counter arguments, I will listen to them and then I'll politely disagree with you.
Before anyone tries, but I feel like Mitch just wants to be antagonist. Before anyone tries to go against him, just remember what he said. For all our listeners who listened back to last year's draft, he called Tariq Woolen before Tariq Woolen was even a thing. So everyone the man knows cornerback. That's all I'm going to say. I've got you back, James. Got you back.
I'm so the stats that you've rung off for Kelee Ringo, they're all well and good, but you've got to realise as well he's playing on the Georgia defense that is the best in college football.
Doesn't matter.
Which means that he's also going against quarterbacks that are throwing under a lot of pressure at him as well. So they can be skewed. I'm not saying they are, because I do not want to incur your wrath.
He's playing against the best quarterbacks. He's playing against Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud. By the way, sacked Will Levis and picked off Will Levis. Picked 6 Bryce Young in a national championship to win the game.
You mean number 1 pick Will Levis?
I mean, number 1 pick Will Levis. He's picked off CJ Stroud, I'm pretty sure. So he's beat and played well against all these top cornerbacks in this class. So
I will let you have your draft
training as well.
You have your draft crush, because I'm sure our listeners and the members of our Discord will be happy to chime in on this, as will our man Mitch.
Yeah, I think you really want me to kind of counter argument this just for the sake of content, but in reality, I really think he's a guy we take. If he's there at 20, I'm not sure we reach with the 20th pick. But I do think that there's a really good chance we trade back from 20 to late first round, and then at that point, I think he's too tempting to pass up. And also at our 37th, if he's still there at 37, you run to the podium. So I do think it's likely he's the guy we take if he's available. The question is, how far does he drop? And I think with Devontae Banks as well climbing up the boards recently. He's fallen out. He's not flavor of the month. He was at one point. I think he peaked he was projected to be a 5th overall at one point, and his physical tools kind of lifted him to the top, and other players that got maybe a few more interceptions proved to be slightly better ball hawks and other skills which are more fashionable at the moment. That they've kind of edged him out, and I think that will drop him right into our laps. So I think other people's ignorance and naivety with Ringo will potentially be to our gain.
I think as well, doesn't he fall just underneath the sort of the standardized requirements that Seahawks look at for cornerbacks, like his arm length and whatnot? Because he's only 31.25 arms. I'm pretty sure we look at 32.5 over.
It's a bit broken, that system now, isn't it? We're taking that Trey Brown and
look how well DJ Reed did, but he's
exactly. You watch his tape and stuff like that, and you could see him being a Seahawk. You could see him being a Seahawk. He came out in an interview early on in the year, and he even mentioned that he'd love to come to Seattle to work with Pete Carroll.
Yeah, thing is, Pete Carroll likes to have that lump of clay at cornerback to mold, doesn't he? He backs himself to be able to get an extra bit out of cornerbacks, and he's got a lot of that sort of raw stuff.
Pete will like his story as well with his mum. And she had a battle through cancer, but she still made every single game, and she he'll love hearing I don't know, it's kind of not something to just say about, but
do you want another little cherry on the top, Pez, as you're talking about those kind of things? Do you know who's been working with him and been hyping him up?
Richard Sherman.
Do you know who he worked with last year and hyped up?
Tariq
Woolen. Yep. Who's he compared to Kelee Ringo to? Patrick Peterson. So, and to be fair, I didn't know this. The Seahawks did actually have Ringo in the actual building at the VMAC on April 13th as well.
He came for a top 30 visit, didn't he?
Yeah, he came for top 30.
Yeah, because it was on his story. It was on his story. He put a picture.
Has been stalking prospects again on Instagram.
Well, I watched the story on him after James spoke highly of him towards the start of the year. Said, "Watch this guy. I think he's going to be the cornerback everyone's going to want." And I watched the video, and then I looked into him, and then I saw the story about his mum, and he's for a late first, early second round prospect, he's very, very humble. So like Mitch said, even though you're taking that high, he's very moldable still.
Yeah. I think that's the big thing. I think the term raw, you used it a lot of times, but it's a kind of a key thing with Kelee Ringo. His production has been good despite him being very raw. His production has been good, and he's been effective, and he's been a star man for that star defense, despite him being raw. So that to me just shouts high ceiling, and that's where I am with him. Elite athletic skills, which make up for the shorter arms, which is an anomaly really when you think about a guy. If I say 6'2" corner, 207 pounds, you're thinking that's a big rangy guy, but actually has kind of shorter arms considering, which is odd. But his athleticism makes up for it. He's a physical freak. He's a great scheme fit.
Right.
The T-Rex.
I'm gonna move it on, and I'm like, I feel like we've got Mitch on as our draft expert of knowledge, and we've not tested him enough. So me and Josh are going to test you. Now
Okay.
I've got a second round prospect who, when I read about him, and smaller guy, when I read about him and see some of his tape and stuff, really like him. Don't know whether I'll give it away here. I don't know whether it's just because I've got a weird little liking towards Michigan. I like the dark blue.
But you're going to say Emmanuel Forbes, right?
No.
DJ Turner.
Yes.
Oh,
Josh.
yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah,
So,
I like it.
So I'll give you three. Talk to me about all three and whether they could be a Seahawk. DJ Turner, then that Kai Blue Kelee.
Kai Blue
Is that
Kelly.
right?
Yeah.
You love him.
And my weird obsession, not obsession, but my weird thing with him came because when I did my first ever mock and I just saw his name, I thought that's a fucking cool name. But then I read into him and I was like, he actually sounds like a Pete Carroll guy. He sounds like a corner that Pete Carroll would love to get his hands on. And then I was like, oh, I might just have it might be a bit of foresight in. But anyway, and then another guy who he's a Senior Bowl guy, and at the Senior Bowl he was spoke on very highly. And I don't know what happened to him or cared to chase it up myself, so I'm going to be lazy and see if you know Mitch. And that's Riley Moss.
He's on my list.
Yes.
Yeah, he's on a lot of people's list, I think. I mean, we could talk a little bit about Kai Blue Kelly if you like first. That's okay.
I'm going to put it to you.
Compare the three.
Not compare as much, just a basic breakdown of what I don't want to know the negatives because they're all, by the sound of it, they're like, especially the two later ones, they're going to be quite moldable, kind of like we said, pieces of clay. So it's more, what do they excel at, and why would we get excited if we pick them?
Okay, I mean, DJ Turner, I don't think will be a Seahawk, but I'd compare him to someone like DJ Reed we had from the 49ers. He never looked like a Seahawks cornerback, but actually had that competitiveness and an edge about him that got him by, and he made some big plays and very physical, and reminds me a little bit of him. I had looked at him, but I just don't think that's Pete Carroll's bag. So I don't think him. Kai Blue Kelly's a really interesting one. He's a guy that was mocked to us long before we got close to the draft. Everyone just looked at him and went, "That's a Pete Carroll guy." And looked like
corner.
Yeah, he looked like a guy that
local guy.
I mean, I think he's six
Senior
foot,
Bowl.
Slightly shorter arms than we'd normally go for. I think about 32 or 33. 33. Someone will have to check that and tell me.
Arms 32.
32. Okay, yeah. So a little bit shorter than we'd expect, and I think his 40 was disappointing. If I remember, I think he didn't test particularly well. I think he had a good vertical, but a bad 40.
His 40 was 4.52, but then his 10-yard was 1.49.
So he did well in drills, but didn't in a straight line. Yeah. So I mean that. He fell off a little bit in mocks because of his performance at the combine. I think if he'd have shown out in the combine, he'd be a lock for the kind of guy we draft in a third round sort of situation. And your third one was
Riley Moss.
Riley Moss,
Love
yeah.
it.
I think he's still projected to be like a third or fourth, right? Or maybe
according
lower actually now.
According to Draft Buzz, what I've just thinking, he's projected fifth round.
Fourth or fifth now. He's dropped again.
32 positional ranking.
But from my memory, I think he had shorter arms for a taller guy. I think he was 6'2", but like 30-ish, 31.
30-inch arms.
30-inch arms. And how tall was he?
6'1".
6'1". Okay, yeah. So he's 6 foot plus, but short arms. I think he was a physical sort of looking talent, but didn't show up too well again in the combine. Is that right? I don't know what he achieved.
He had an okay 40, a 4.45, 68
Yeah.
percentile, but then his 10-yard was 148, what was a 93 percentile. The recon was 95%. Vertical and broad were pretty much around the same at 85 and 81. So he tested. He didn't test too bad, to be quite honest, but is there a reason? So with him, I brought him up because I remember when Senior Bowl happened, I was listening to my podcast and everyone was saying he was the main corner going to the Senior Bowl, what everyone wanted to watch. But then they said he didn't do that well at the Senior Bowl, and then Kelee was the one who was highlighted the most from what I heard for how well he was doing, at the Senior Bowl. And then Riley Moss was like, it's a name I heard of at the very start, and then he's just like a non-entity now. Is someone going to get a steal? If they get Riley Moss, is someone going to get an absolute steal? Is what I'm kind of.
Yeah, this is what I'll say, right? From my knowledge of what Pete Carroll does with his cornerbacks when he looks for them and when he selects them and when he trains them up, he'll have a list of players that meet his measurements and sort of characteristics. He'll have a list of players that are long-armed, 6 foot, 6'2", something like that. He'll have a list of those players, and then he'll watch to see how those traits that they have translate when they do the combine. And when you look at Tariq Woolen, he was freakishly tall and quick, and he would have been on a short list for Pete Carroll, and then he saw him at the combine and he blew it up. That's boxes ticked for Pete Carroll. When you look at these guys, they all have their own strengths. Some of them have Pete Carroll type characteristics, but then didn't blow up the combine. So I think when it comes to Pete Carroll looking at what he can pick up 3rd or 4th round as a steal that he can mold from a 3rd round prospect into like a 2nd round prospect just through his coaching, he needs to see the traits and he needs to see that show up in the combine as well as on tape. So these guys don't tick all those boxes, and for that reason, I don't think any of these guys would be Seahawks picks.
I see where you're coming from there, but I'm like just looking through Riley Moss's strengths. Like I said, I use NFL Draft Buzz for everything because I don't like to over mix my resources where I get to stuff. He's got right. So I'll just quickly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He's got 9 bullet points, like ranging from good size, fluid mover, capable of mirroring quickness underneath, physical line of scrimmage. He has a strong core and hips on the boundary, to latch onto receivers and escort them to the sideline. He's Bruce Feldman's freak list. His core and lower body strength to escort receivers to the sideline when working deep. They're repeating himself twice here. Tremendous instincts with eyes in the backfield. His fluid speed, quick feet to come down, defend slot receivers in man coverage. And then you go to his weaknesses. So we spoke about this on a previous pod about Draft Buzz. They kind of use positives. It's like they contradict themselves, don't they? They like have a positive, what's a negative as well. Can you guess how many, for being a 5th round projection without looking any, if you've looked, don't say, how many weaknesses do you reckon he has, according to their report, for being a 5th round guy? Just a quick guess.
I'd say they'd have at least 3 or 4 bullet points. They usually have at least 4. How many?
2. Needs to develop a better understanding of route combinations and better overall vision. Easily coachable. Tends to play conservatively and gives too much cushion when playing off. That pretty much sounds like all his corners.
I was going to say that'll suit us right to the ground, won't it?
Yeah, wind me up. I've seen too much of that. Giving up chunk plays of 4 or 5 yards when we didn't need to every time.
So we spoke about this on a previous pod. Was it the linebackers about being able to having weaknesses what are coachable and physical weaknesses?
Giving up too much of a cushion is a lack of confidence in your ability, though.
Yeah, I know, but that's coachable.
I don't think it's coachable. I think that's experience. I think you need to get out on the field and make some plays and get that kind of that energy about you and that confidence to be a competitor. I don't think Pete Carroll would like someone not believing in themselves and not backing themselves to go toe to toe with he wants to see people compete, and that's quite a big one.
I turn around and then argue against it with their with their report on saying that him jamming up receivers and like physical on the line of scrimmage. So if you've got not a lot of confidence in your abilities, then you can't really be good on the boundary to escort receivers to the sideline, have decent knowledge of the backfield, and what was the other one? Being physical at the line of scrimmage, showing unexpected power. It's like
it's a contradiction.
It's again the contradiction. So really, you could rule out that by what they're saying his strengths are. So really, the way I look at it is his one weakness is needs to develop better understanding of route combinations. What is a massively easy coachable thing, surely.
Yeah, maybe.
And then just a quick one before I leave this alone. Josh has got to love Kai Brown Kelly because the first strength is good strength to tackle. Whenever I hear that,
your boy loves to tackle.
First bullet point is anything positive to do with tackling. Josh has probably got them in his big board, like taking 5. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah. I mean, just to summarize that, I think Kai Blue Kelly is the only one on there that I think is a good shout. But I'm not sure.
Interesting, Josh. Out of these,
to Riley Moss.
hey, I had him as my sleeper, so you've killed that bird with that stone, Pez. So well done.
I don't want. I mean, I want to sort of blitz through a couple, and if you can just give me some shorthand notes on them.
Yeah.
Start with Darius Rush.
Darius Rush projected
second
around
to
third or
round.
fourth. Oh right, okay, he's a bit higher than I thought. Let me have a look. What notes have I got on Rush? Bigger guy, right? I think he's lengthy, right? 6'2", 6'3". I didn't catch him at the combine, so I'd have to check. I haven't actually got any notes on my spreadsheet for his 40, but I'm just checking now. 4.36 40. I'm seeing here. So he's a guy that I didn't look too much into. Mainly because I think there's a number of others that I'll come on to later that are possibly better fits. But it really does look like he showed out with his performance at the combine. And at 6'2", 33.5-inch arms, he probably is someone that Pete Carroll would look at, like I say, with those physical sort of measurements. And looking at this, he's added some seriously competitive numbers at the combine as well. So also, I think whatever projections you're reading on websites, I drop them down a half a round, just because currently the first round corners are dropping down the board, which inevitably will cascade the other guys down half a round to a round. So if you're hearing that this is a late second, early third, this is probably more like a comfortable third, possibly early fourth, which drops him right into the sweet spot for Pete Carroll, I would say. So actually a really, really good pick there with Darius Rush.
Good days. I was gonna say Corey Trice, just because I want to say real name, no gimmicks. But having done a bit more scouting myself, I don't think he's someone that we take.
No,
which disappoints me. But just based on the lack of speed and fluidity, I don't think that he seems to be more as a strong safety. Based on what I'm reading and what I've sort of seen, I think he's
decent coverage, slower guy, powerful build, 6'3". Yeah, he's a guy I really like. Again, the name appealed more than anything.
Just imagine that ringing out over Lumen every single time.
Yeah, the name appealed, and he is someone I profiled. Actually, I've got quite a lot of him on my spreadsheets. But again, like you didn't. Don't see him translating as a corner. I think he'll be a safety at the next level because of that speed. Lots of power though in ratings.
There was two more. We mentioned a guy earlier, but I'm not going to go into him because I've read more on him. I've not even bothered looking at tape. He just reads awful. Starling Thomas V.
Don't know.
Projected 5th to 6th. Now I was having a look at some of his sort of the write-ups on him, and again, I will profess to not being the best at cornerbacks. It's not my bag. I've always just said I want cornerbacks that people are scared to run at or throw at. preferably someone who is scared to catch a ball in their vicinity. That's all I look for in a cornerback. Everything else, it's not me. Well, he was another one. Mekhi Garner, did you have a look at any of his stuff?
Yeah, for LSU, yeah. Garner's an interesting prospect because he's bounced around projections quite heavily. I think he peaked in the second round, and I think now he's settling around 3 to 4. Am I right? Is that where he's currently being projected?
It depends. If you're going off Brugler's Beast Guide, he's projected at 7. But this has been out for a few weeks now, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think opinions on him are quite varied. He's an older prospect. He's also quite heavy. I think he's been as heavy as 220 last year, but I think at the combine he weighed in somewhere around 210, which for in context is heavier than Kelee Ringo, who is a seriously chunky boy. But I think it translates okay. I don't think his 40 was slow. I think it was like 4.5, 4.6, somewhere in between there from watching it. Really competitive, that dude. If this was someone we picked, I think it would be off the basis that he's a bit of an animal and he doesn't mind contact with receivers. He puts himself about, might attract a few flags, but a real competitor and a good size. 6'2", I think, 210-ish.
6'2", 212 was what he was last weighed at, I think, for the Beast Guide. Texas, not the most productive of years last year. Let's have a look. So he had a 4.55 40, a 2.61 20, and a 1.51 10-yard split. Vertical jump 38 and broad jump 10.8.
The thing about that vertical, 38 is good. Is very good. I think that's well above average. But at 210, so it's a heavy dude. Like getting up that high, that when you're that heavy, that translates well. Physical corner.
Yeah. I'll put this to you, Mitch. One corner that you could handpick and put in a Seahawks uniform out of this class. Is there a clear favourite for you?
Yeah, there is. And for anyone watching on YouTube, you may recognise or may not recognise my display pick today. But yeah, I do have an absolute favourite in this draft, and it's Julius Brents. Our issue with Julius Brents is I think we'd either have to reach for him at 52 or hope he's there at 83, unless we do a John Schneider special and jiggle around the board a little bit, trade a few picks and manoeuvre it. He's an outrageous player, and he's a guy I've probably enjoyed watching the most this year. I'll give you a few little bits, right? 6'3", 198, not a drop of fat on him. He's a little bit sloppy in press, which is a problem because I think we're going to do a lot of press coverage this year, ideally. When we're playing 3-man front, we'll try and delay wide receivers into the backfield to put more pressure on the QB while we're keeping him in the pocket. So if you don't play press when you're doing 3-man front, you give up a lot of quick slants and things which relieve all the pressure. So they'll do a lot of press. So Julius Brents would have to be good there if we played him as a wide cornerback. But here's why I love Julius Brents, right? When you compare all of his combine, right? There's a few really interesting things. Size 6'3", 198. That was Sherman. 6'3", 195 he was. Julius Brent, 6'3", 198. Very comparable coming into the league. Okay. When you look at other measurables, Brent's arms 34-inch, amazing long arms for a corner, or a safety, which I think he could do. He could do both, right? Richard Sherman's arms much shorter than that. 40-yard dash 4.53. Sherman's 4.6. Here's the big one. The broad jump of 11 feet for Brent's. That is outrageous. 100%. That is outrageous. So you're looking at a real physical freak. but he's got these vibes of a really productive nickel or free safety. It's immense at coverage. I showed some footage to Josh at one point, I think, and he's got this amazing technique. And I know it's common. It's a common thing that people try to do. It's very rare people do it well and don't attract flags. And that is, he because he's long limbed, he stays underneath in coverage, even if he's got the beating of his man with pace. He watches the receiver. The second the receiver clocks the quarterback throwing and raises his hands, he disrupts the hands while he's turning. So he puts the hands through the receiver's hands. It is impossible for them to catch the ball because his hand's there already, and then turns, clocks the ball, and makes the interception. So before even trying to play the ball, he makes it impossible for the receiver to catch. Just the comp to Sherman, with all the size things, a lot of that translates, but the testing at the combine dwarfed Sherman. And Sherman, they always said, he's big, but he's a bit slow, or he relies on other factors to make up for his lack of speed. This guy's got all of it. He's got all of the strengths. He hasn't got those weaknesses. The only weaknesses he does have, technique in press that I've mentioned, and doesn't move feet well on initial movement. Pez will tell you what Pete Carroll's good for, right? Kick steps. The first things Pete Carroll teaches are exactly his weaknesses. And if he could be taught to use that physical advantage and those long arms that he's got better in press, unbelievable at corner. Huge potential as a nickel for us. Huge potential to help cover the 3 safety slots we're going to play a lot of this year. He can play backup to Kobe. He can be cover for the 3 safeties, and he can cover both wide out corners as well. Unbelievable.
I like it. He's definitely one that's starting to shoot up draft boards a bit. And just out of my personal... Go on, Pez, sorry.
I was just going to say he's becoming very league-wide noticeable. Like he's that late emerging corner. But that, in a way, it might be bad for Mitch, but it'll be great for you, James, because if there's enough buzz around him, then he'll jump over Ringo and just drop Ringo down a little bit further, and it might be able to get him at the start of the second.
Potential for it. I'd love to see both of them. There's room for both of them on the roster.
Mitch keeps putting in the potential trade of the Seahawks trading with the Eagles for their 10th and their 30th pick, and doing a second round swap. So we get Jackson Smith and Jigba at 10 and then Ringo at 30. How's that sound?
I'd be fine with that.
I'd be fine with that.
And just out of interest for me, I know obviously the likelihood is we're probably not going to take any of the top 5 guys, the consensus top 5 guys anyway, but how would you rank them top 5s wise? Say like Witherspoon, Porter Jr., Gonzalez, sort of, how would you rate those guys? Do you have them in a certain order?
For me? Yeah, good question. I'm really big on Joey Porter Jr. I know a lot of grades and things have him 3rd or 4th, but for me, he's 2nd. I've got Devin Witherspoon 1st. I've got Joey Porter Jr. 2nd. Third for me, Gonzalez, but it's close. I think Gonzalez has got that ball hawking playmaker vibe.
I think, just to jump in there, because I listened to 2 separate podcasts about these cornerbacks, and Witherspoon's realistically going to be the first one because of who's picking. Because I think it's his personality.
Yeah,
he
a real competitor.
He exudes confidence, but I think transitioning college to NFL, I think Christian Gonzalez is going to be the best out of the 3.
Yeah.
If they all start, if they all get starting for the season, I think he'll be on top by the end of the season out of 3 of them. Him or Joey Porter Jr. Joey Porter Jr. is just he's the. It can be a negative, but I think it might benefit him. He's good at everything. He doesn't excel at one thing, but he does everything really well.
You want that in a corner, though. You don't want corners with weaknesses. People pick up on that very quickly.
That's what I mean. Like, whereas I could easily see Joey Porter Jr. as well being the most successful out of the 3 because he's really good at everything. He's sound at everything. That surely is more coachable when you're already really sound at doing everything you need to do.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I've got Devontae Banks at 4, Kelee Ringo at 5, and I've dropped 4. I don't mention Forbes just because I think the size and lack of weight, it's going to take him a while to get up to the sort of. Don't get me wrong. I know, was it six pick sixes in a season?
Yeah.
Outrageous production wise, unbelievable. I just don't know. He's an unknown factor for me in how much he'll translate those skills to the NFL because of his lack of size.
Tested really well. His height's good.
He did.
His arms are pretty much bang on. Hands are small. Jesus Christ, I've not even looked at this guy, but
he's a freak.
61.9 QB rating when targeted. And like Draft Buzz do this for anyone who's listening, has not seen it before, but they're doing overall rating. His overall rating is 87.8. The only thing that's knocked him down is because his tackling is 72%. Everything else they do tackling, run defense, coverage, zone, and man press.
Okay, well I didn't get a chance. I didn't get a chance to do my sleeper, and I just while Pez is on Draft Buzz, would you do me a favor, Pez, and just check Darrell Luter Jr. And check Darrell Luter Jr.'s QB rating when targeted, because I think last year his QB rating when targeted was below 10.
In 12
Luter
games,
Jr.'s quarterback rating when targeted was 3.9. People stopped throwing at him, and when they did, it didn't go well for them.
In 10
and that
games.
Reminds me, with the projection of where he'd be drafted and his intangibles, and also his measurements, I honestly think he'd be an absolute steal. And also because we've got Mike Jackson and Tariq Woolen, we're not necessarily need to draft for immediate impact.
Well, for our listeners as well, that isn't a soundboard. That's just James.
It's like he's in the room. We've brought him back.
Whilst we're talking about seventh rounders, undrafted guys, the guy who I think could be a proper like Pete Carroll, like you're looking 7th round, but by the sounds of it, no one's really buzzing about him, so you probably could just risk it and get him undrafted, and I think he probably could. Is that Rajon Wright? Have I said that? You ever said that right? Rajon Wright. His height is 6'2". His arms are 32.5. He didn't look like he went to the combine. I know he went to a Seattle Pro Day. He got invited by the Seahawks to a Seattle Pro Day, and on here it's registered his 40 time at 4.35. If you just Google him and watch his highlights, if I'm right in saying he already does, because he's from Oregon State, he already does the kick step, and that's one of the things what he's highlighted for being really good at. And he's worked with Richard Sherman, whilst he's been at college. So you've got, again, that link like Ringo, like Tariq Woolen.
Why don't we just ask Richard Sherman what cornerbacks he's worked with and just pick them?
I'm sure there has been a lot of back and forth.
I'm sure Pete Carroll has done that.
Yeah, better have done, because Kelee Ringo is a Seahawk then. Anyway, let's get to these safeties. Let's finish off on these safeties. I've got two that I really like. One, I guess they're both kind of sleepers, but one is definitely more of a sleeper than the other. The one that isn't as much of a sleeper that probably more people will be aware of is Ronnie Hickman out of Ohio State. Currently kind of projected in the 3rd to 4th round. I think he's a little bit better than that. I think he's a 2nd round player in my opinion. I mean, his quarterback rating when targeted last season, 34.7 on 700 snaps. He's got really good size, really good arms, measurables that you like. So downhill. I love how downhill he is. A proper bit of a throwback safety in the box, plays the run really well. And I think with this sort of 3 safety look that Seattle's going for, I know we've signed Julian Love, but obviously Ryan Neal's gone now. Again, as we've talked about so many times, you cannot bank on Jamal Adams. Quandre Diggs has had his injury problems in the past. So safety, I think they still will look to add maybe one there, just for depth in that position if we do proceed with this 3 look at the position. And I think Ronnie Hickman could be a really nice really nice pick up in the third or fourth. So yeah, Ronnie Hickman is the one that isn't as much of a sleeper for me, but I do really like him, and I think if he goes in the fourth, I think that's harsh on him. I think he's better than that. Sorry, Pez, you want to
jump in on him because I was going to talk about him myself. So, do you reckon you said he's not so much of a sleeper, but I think he is because I don't hear anyone talking about him. And really, you look at again the weaknesses. So this is something that Mitch probably won't like after what we spoke about in the cornerbacks. Is a lesson gives him the potential to be tremendous range in coverage, but often hesitates and doesn't seem confident in what he sees.
Yeah,
that's one thing. And then the other one is route combinations, what's coachable, and then one what Josh is going to hate. But then it'll be great for us because Quandre Diggs is there, lowers his shoulder for a big hit rather than wrapping up securely.
Honestly, why do people think it's okay to go in like a missile?
We love that though. Watch his highlights and it's fucking hard.
No, we don't love it though. We don't love it because when you get to the professional level, all it's going to take is someone to get clocked once and go, well, the next time you launch, I'm just going to sort of stop or stutter step and you are going straight past me. It's not a technique to teach.
You can never go wrong.
Times, so we can just go.
Marquise Blair will attest to it. Mitch?
Yeah, he is interesting. I think this is one of the worst years for safeties. There's a few at the top, and then there's a few bargains at the bottom. But the sort of the bit in the middle is there's so many glaring weaknesses that it just the pick you'd have to spend to get them just doesn't seem worth it. If we take a safety in this draft, I want it to be right at the top or right down the bottom. I don't want to see any thirds or fourths, even fifths spent on safeties because I just don't think there's one there for us. And Ronnie Hickman really fits into the exact mold of why. I'll give you an example of someone on our team over the last few years who's probably infuriated us all, and that's Cody Barton. For the exact reasons that Ronnie Hickman's flawed. And that is the comment you made, Pez. I think you said something like, doesn't trust his instincts, so gives up too many yards or something before acting upon. That instinct of not sort of backing yourself is the reason why Cody Barton will make 8, 9, 10 tackles a game, but will give up 50, 60 yards in making them. And it will be because the hesitation or the lack of instincts or acting upon instincts. And with my safeties, I need them sharp. If your safeties are doing something, it's because the play is already at an advanced state. The ball's in the air, the tight end's made a run and he's getting the ball. You need them sharp, not missing a tackle because they've launched into it like a missile. Quandre Diggs. You need them to be sure at that point, and I want an instinctive safety. I miss Earl Thomas.
I get that, but do you not think with our leadership base within the players, the whole confidence thing isn't actually a bigger factor when you got Bobby Wagner? Because let's face it, he's either gonna fuck you off himself, or you gotta get confident because he's gonna be screaming at you.
It's a fair point, but it didn't help Cody Barton.
Wow.
That's the only thing. I completely take the point. Mitch, there's a lot of really good leadership in there.
If you ever want to come on this podcast again, he's gone. We do not mention his name again. He wasn't a thing.
But it does end the discussion. No, I take the point. There's a lot of good personalities in there, but I think sometimes when it comes to instincts, some players just don't cut it. And I think if we signed someone like Ronnie Hickman, if we drafted him, I think you're looking at a guy who's going to play a lot of special teams, be a rotational piece, and potentially just fizzle out and not play. I don't know. Maybe 2-3 years into that rookie contract, he starts to trust in his instincts and suddenly becomes more like a second round prospect or an early third. But honestly, I think his projection really suits him for the weaknesses he has. I don't think he's worth a high level draft pick. I take.
So, is there a safety then in this class, Mitch, that doesn't hesitate that you do really like?
Yeah, there is. There's one at the top and there's one at the bottom. There's one that's too high up for us to, I think, take unless we move right to the back of the first round. And that's Brian Branch.
Oh, what a boy.
Yeah, Brian Branch is the premium. Like, I don't know if I want to see us spend a 20th pick on him because I think we could do an awful lot more with it. But there is a potential
But-
to trade back and get some day 2 stuff and still take him. And that I
Could
love.
a 20 as a corner?
Sorry?
If you could, would you take him at 20 as a corner?
No. Oh, it's so
No.
hard. It is so hard because I could see him
It is
playing
hard.
nickel and safety and as a corner for us. And someone who's that versatile and that much of an X factor in everything he does.
Yeah. It's just
Could
the type
become
of
a key
player you
piece.
need to have on the field. That's the thing. So
Yeah.
if you were to draft him, you'd have to squeeze him in somewhere. And personally, I'm with Mitch. We've discussed this. I love this guy. I think he's brilliant because he tackles properly. He is instinctive to the football. He reads a game really, really well, and he can be an absolute game wrecker on the line as well. But you've got to try and squeeze him in somewhere. Personally, I don't see him as an outside corner. I think he plays the centre of the field better. So that would then necessitate him having to go in nickel or take him on the safety spots. And let's face it, that ain't happening.
He's only a sleeper in terms of being underrated, I think. He's not a sleeper in the respect that you're going to pick him up for huge value at the end of the draft. But Jamie Robinson is going to be a steal for someone. Anytime you can draft a guy aged 22 that's already played 3,000 snaps in college, you're getting a guy that's you're going to get the tape is going to tell you an awful lot because there's going to be so much of it. You're going to have him bang to rights on his weaknesses. You'll know the weaknesses he has drafting him, and all of his strengths and his habits will be there for everyone to see. He is a tremendous hitter. I think if anyone who watched the Senior Bowl will have seen a hit he laid out on one of the running backs. I can't remember who it was, but he literally planted him in the turf. There'll be a tree sprouting at some point, which looks a lot like a running back next year, just because he planted him deep into the soil with that hit. It was crazy. That's a really hard hitting safety that has great coverage skills, can rush a bit as well. So there's a lot there that someone might get some value out of it as a 3rd round pick.
Am I right in saying we've spoken to him twice as well? Did we speak to him at the combine? We had him for a top 30
Correct.
visit.
And we've had him for a visit. Yeah, that's right. We have. Really versatile player, great scheme fit, real edge about him. Reminds me a lot with the way he approaches tackling players. Reminds me a lot of Jamal Adams. You see a lot of shoestring tackles. He gets to players that you would, I can't remember who it was. It might have been Cam Newton sneaking. Who was it? He had a shoestring tackle right in the corner, stopped them on the 1 yard line, and then we had a heroic stop on the 1 yard line. And it all came back, and you thought, Jamal Adams, do you know what? He's stopped that. It was a couple of seasons back. But you see Jamie Robinson making a lot of those shoestring tackles, and just a bit of X factor about him that I think stinks of Seahawks.
What we say in his name is because I see it as Jamie.
It's we had this conversation before, so it's Jamie, but it's spelt Jammy, like Jammy.
We're going to call him Jammy. We're going to call him the Jammy Dodger.
I think everyone has.
Okay.
Everyone I've listened to that has discussed this man. There's been quite a lot of discussion about him over sort of different podcasts and social media. Everyone goes, we know it's Jamie, but we're calling him Jammy, just because that's how it's spelt and that's how the English language works.
And now
Double M.
He's another player. If the Seahawks draft him, is called Jammy Dodger. We've got a new nickname for a new player. Do you reckon though? Because you said 3rd round, and I know that's where his projection is. But like Josh said, then his name is starting to be mentioned more and more and more. And I've not only until the last couple, probably since we've been doing this podcast, I've properly paid attention pre-draft. I normally wait to see who we drafted, watch all the highlights, get really excited, and go, "Oh, he hits really hard. That's going to be fun." But one thing I have noticed in the last couple of years is the ones you need to watch out for who go a lot earlier than you think are the ones who get mentioned nearer to the draft. The names that stick, and his name, because like you said, you are right. I looked at that safety list, and I've not really looked at any of them. Like Jamie Robinson is one I liked the look of, liked his highlights. Got an obsession with the twin. JL Sinner, obviously, before the injury, like the whole Cam Chancellor, you watch his highlights, he's like bloody.
Cam Chancellor.
I
Cam
call
Chancellor
him a
reborn.
poor. I call him a poor man's Cam Chancellor because no one will ever live up
Okay.
to what he was. But you look at this list, and like you said, if you don't go Brian Branch, I've not heard much about Antonio Johnson. I've heard a bit about Jordan. Did he pronounce it Battle as you read it,
Yeah.
or has he
Yeah,
got a
just as you
special
read it.
fancy name? Yeah, I've heard people saying he's better than Antonio Johnson, and Antonio Johnson's going to drop down the board. And then I've heard a bit about Brandon Joseph, but like you said, you're then creeping into that territory of Brandon Joseph, Christopher Smith, Ronnie Hickman, J.R. Brown.
Yeah, J.R.
J.R. Brown. Them lot in that middling round where you don't want to waste it on them.
Yeah.
And it's like, what am I looking at? The only other one, what I would bring up is the twin brother
Sydney
of
Brown.
Sydney Brown, because he's not like, you kind of get him in. He's got his flaws. Got a lot of flaws. He's projected third, fourth round. He's got a lot of his game he needs to work on, but he's going to attract attention because he's got big ass hands for his height and his arm length. That's really weird. Big fucking claws. But then he's 40. He's 10
I don't think it's quite that obvious, but yeah.
Freddy Krueger.
Small hands, huge hands on the end of tiny arms.
Just big gloves.
Like one of those foam fingers you have at, you know.
He tested in the combine. He tested really, really well.
Yeah, he did.
Like in the 80% for his 40 and his 10-yard, but then his vertical, broad, and bench were all 90% plus. He tested really well. Senior Bowl guy. The thing you hear about him is his high energy. You might read him and go, no, he's got a bit to work. Like, he's got a bit to work on, like, to have him a starter. But he just sounds like a Seahawks guy. We spoke about him off air. We spoke about him on our Discord. Like, from the Senior Bowl, all you hear is he was the main guy. He was the guy who everyone gravitated towards. High energy, big, outspoken, brings the energy wherever he is. And he just screams Seahawk to me. Like, for where you could potentially get him good value, maybe, depending how the draft shakes out, I think he might be a good piece to bring in, sitting behind Quandre and Jamal, train him up a little bit. Like I said, special teams. Like, he's got the physicality, he's got the attitude to work, and like you said, what I don't think I had heard before about his upbringing and where he's come from. It just screams like Pete Carroll's.
Well, for any of the listeners who weren't aware of the upbringing for the Brown twins, their family were basically homeless when they were about 2 years old, and they moved in. I can't remember if it was a family friend or just someone that agreed to put them up via a charity or something, but they basically moved across the country, set up somewhere new, got a fresh start with a new family, and really had to. The whole family had this kind of grit and perseverance to start again, and they both went to different high schools, but both ended up playing for the same college. And there's a real nice story that shows some serious grit. And we hear year after year after out of the draft, there's always 2 or 3 guys who have got a story behind them that shows some real sort of just grit. I know I said it before, but yeah, really just grit and this will to win and make it. And I think with these prospects, that's one thing that gives you a better chance, because it's only a small percentage of them that really make it and get a contract beyond their rookie year. If someone's shown throughout their life that they have a perseverance to make it, I think that makes Pete Carroll root for them a bit more, and maybe be more willing to take the plunge with the pick.
I'm just going to chuck one in there. I don't know if we spoke about him already. Christopher Smith from Georgia. Yeah. So
you want me to talk about him, or you talk about?
I'll chuck some bits out there. So
Yeah.
Last season, just got off his stats: 61 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, 8 passes defensed, 3 interceptions, unanimous All-American, first team All SEC, and he led the team in interceptions. Also got a 96-yard blocked field goal touchdown. Now, everything you read and watch about him, he's quite a slight guy. He's not the tallest. He's 5'11", I think, or 5'10", maybe. He's not the biggest guy. People are projecting him to go cornerback just due to his slight frame, but his nickname with the team is Soldier. He will never be someone that will blast someone in a tackle, but he is willing to make tackles. And what I've seen is technique for what's essentially a grab and pull is usually quite good, and he will get people to the ground, so he's not going to knock people back. But if he meets someone in centre field and he's still got some yards behind him to play with, he'll always make that tackle. I like him as sort of a fourth round projection for me, and I think he'd be someone that Pete Carroll will gravitate towards because of the heart he shows when he plays, and he's playing in a good Georgia defence. Put him at free safety, or he can go in the nickel. You let him learn from Quandre for a bit, and you've got a ready-made replacement there. And he's got time to put some bulk on then as well. But Mitch, what would you say about Chris Smith?
I watched loads of Georgia last year because I was watching our boy Jalen Carter, and who we're going to draft in the fifth pick. I'm joking. Maybe we won't. I don't know. It's on. I think it's possibly on the cards. But I was watching a lot of Jalen Carter last year, which obviously exposed me a lot to Kelee Ringo and Christopher Smith. Christopher Smith's a really interesting one because he doesn't test well. Really, he's not that athlete that pops off a stat sheet. Yeah, he doesn't. However, I feel like sometimes players, in order to compete, have to hone other skills and instincts and gain really healthy habits to keep up when they don't have those natural gifts. And he's that kind of guy for me. I don't know if you get that opinion, Josh, but he seems a guy that really had to grind it out and win with a good brain rather than good. Yeah.
It's good football brain, and that's what I like to see from especially a free safety, because that's why you look at people like Quandre. They're a ball hawk because they read the game well from back there. That's why they'll get under balls. That's why they'll get the interceptions. That's why they become sort of a no-fly zone at points, even if it's just batted passes.
If I remember correctly, he had a really good quarterback rating when targeted as well, 51.5. And I'll tell you why 51.5 is extremely good. I know it's a really good Georgia defense, but with the players, the quarterback was having to choose a soft spot to throw at. When you've got Kelee Ringo there, you're not choosing Kelee Ringo when you've got this guy in the middle of the field, until things start going horribly wrong for you, and then you go somewhere else. And with a 51 quarterback rating, they didn't get much change out of him, and they will have seen him as a soft spot, and he didn't give in to that. So I like it. One thing I will say, just very quickly, on the safeties, I think because there's no real standouts in the middle of the class, I think the projections are all very unreliable. The top three are going to be first and second round. The next 10 could be. It is literally just what suits whose scheme, and who needs a safety, and literally it's the guy. A guy projected at fifth just because he's safety number 9 could actually be a second rounder because he fits a scheme, or someone has a need, or they could all fall into the 6th round because no one wants to take a bet on an inconsistent, weaker safety class.
Yeah, I think it's universally sort of agreed that it's not the strongest safety class.
Yeah,
and I think that goes strong and free. I think it's all over. Like I said, that there are a few at the top end that you'd be quite happy to take, but anything, as soon as they go off the board, you kind of go, I'm not overly enamoured. If we've got a spare pick and we don't really like anyone else on the board, we'll give it a shot. But I don't think anyone's going to go out and get anyone, like I said, below the sort of top 3. I think it's going to be.
There's no standout, is there really?
I think there'll be quite a lot of sort of undrafted free agents from this.
Well, I'm going to round off this safety / cornerback prospect pod with, just as you happen to mention it, undrafted kind of prospects. There's a guy I absolutely love, and I'm going to put the spotlight on him for a couple of minutes because he is your prototypical. Well, you're going to laugh, but when this guy is playing well in the NFL in a few years, that'll get cropped, Pez. So you keep laughing, son. It's just your typical.
Why is he so hostile all the time? I'm just laughing because you normally pick a random diamond.
It's from the northeast, mate.
I was backing you up, And you just.
Oh, well, it didn't look like it. You could have been a bit more sort of, tip hat kind of thing instead of just laughing at me. Anyway, I'm going to put the spotlight on him because these kind of prospects never get the spotlight on them. And all too often, you see them playing well and forging out good NFL careers for themselves because they just do the basics well and they're just good players, and that's it. It's Kayvon Merriweather out of Iowa. I absolutely love him. He is the most default character when you load up Madden and create your own character and they just give you the base character.
What a description.
I love it.
Do you know what I mean? And then you can adjust the sliders from there. But Merriweather is the guy that they give you to start with. He's got so average measurables, just nothing that blows you away. Doesn't really have any highlights on YouTube because there's nothing that grabs people's attention about him. He's not particularly quick. He's not particularly explosive. Blah, 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 blah. But he's just a really, really, really good player. And he's going to go undrafted, in my opinion. And I hope to God we pick him up because he'll have a career in the NFL, this guy. He will have a career, mark my words. And how about this? We've been talking about QB ratings and stuff like this on this podcast. It's a big part of how we...
I think
it's sub 30. In 2022, fifth-year senior Merriweather. So I think he's about 23 at this point. Yeah, 23. 99 boy like me. Anyway, 2022... 806 snaps at safety for Iowa, 42 tackles, 6 assists, 17 stops, 4 pass breakups, 3 interceptions, and a quarterback rating when targeted of 11.7. He is just a really good player that is getting absolutely lost in the process because the measurables don't excite you. Nothing excites you when you look at Kayvon Merriweather. But someone is going to get a really, really good undrafted player here that'll forge a career in the NFL and be playing in the NFL as a solid backup. Sort of, you can lean on him as a starter when you ask him to. He's never going to be a superstar. I'm not projecting him. This isn't one of these guys that I throw at you in the 7th round who's going to be a Hall of Famer like John Rattigan and all these kind of guys. He's not going to be anything like that. I'm not claiming that he's going to be anything like that. What Kayvon Merriweather is going to be is a good NFL player, a roster guy every year. And that kind of value as an undrafted free agent, we've seen that kind of value in a Poona Ford, in a Brian Monet. Kayvon Merriweather is going to be another kind of one of the guys. And I just think he was also, I think he was the captain on the Iowa defense that has Jack Campbell, that has Riley Moss. Kayvon Merriweather was the captain. He was the leader of that defense. And just put him down in your... And it wasn't just last year, to be fair, with his quarterback rating. 2021, 60.2 quarterback rating when targeted. 2020, 56.3. Yeah, he is, other than his very first season as a sophomore in 2019, his first and second season as a freshman and sophomore in 2020. Yeah, it was pretty bad. 116, 158. No, but
check this out, though. To just back you up here, James. In his freshman year, he only had 15 snaps.
That's true.
2 games, 15 snaps, 116.7.
Mm-hmm.
In his sophomore year, he played 1 game, had 51 snaps, and 158.3. So clearly must have played a stinker, and they just fucking benched him. But then, as a junior, a senior, and a 5th-year senior, he played 7 games, 365 snaps, 14 games, 672 snaps, 12 games, 806, and his passer rating has just stayed consistent. The more he got played, so whatever happened after his sophomore year, he is literally just took a interesting.
He's got an ascending sort of trend about him. I really like him as an undrafted free agent. I think he could be a good special teamer and a contributor and back up to the safety corps that we've got. I think he'd be an absolute steal.
Mm-hmm.
As an undrafted guy, 100%.
Just put his name down. Just put his name down and see what he does in the NFL. Just keep him on your tracker. That's all I ask because I think he's going to have a good NFL career as an undrafted free agent.
And then Rajon Wright coming in together.
Rajon Wright. Yeah.
I had a bit of a stutter, right?
Oh, here we go. He got the fucking excuses again.
I had a couple of fucking episodes, right, where I got a few names mixed up. But you two
Couple
rolling
of
your
episodes.
eyes.
A couple of episodes. Being
Right,
kind
and
to
you two,
yourself, yeah.
listen. You pair
I'm going to
of
go
pieces of
through,
shit.
and I'm
Right.
going to go through all of our video pods, all of the YouTube videos now, and I'm just doing a
Listen.
mashup of the ones that
Listen,
you've got
you
horrendously
and
and
fucking
tremendously
you
wrong.
in the corner. Fucking talk about supporting podcasts, the free fucking devilish duo. I even got that wrong. And you two just roll your fucking eyes at me, right? Just roll
The best
your
thing is
eyes
you
at
can't
me.
even see Mitch. Mitch is there with his head in his hands, like, what am I on?
Well,
am I
his
doing
picture's Julius Branson. He's just got like an awkward smile on his face. That's probably what Mitch is doing right now. I'm not coming on with these fucking idiots again. This guy can't even fucking read. I've got told to come on to give some expertise on draft things, and this guy can't fucking spell. Idiot. Right, that's it. I
And with
retire.
that,
Okay.
Yeah.
let's not
There's
sign off with
there's
that bit now.
corners in this class like Eli Ricks, are dead easy names. Who does Pez out there? Rajon Wright, and all these names that just cause his tongue to tangle. He never picks the easy route, do you, Pez? But bless you, you do give it a try. Well,
Bless you.
Before we wrap up, because I know
Piece of
James is itching
shit.
to wrap up, I just want to say that now we've reached the end of our pre-draft series. I feel like my role here, it becomes like Michael Bublé in January. I feel like I now
Back
retreat
into
into
your
a cave
cave you
and you wheel
go.
me out. You wheel me out just before April next year.
Oh, we'll get you on after the draft. We've still got to look at how our big board shaped out.
True.
But
Yeah.
with that as well, just very quickly on our socials, we did do a mock that may be coming out on YouTube if Jimbo has the time to do so. I will be sharing the mock draft that we did on our Instagram. I'll do something on TikTok as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Set up some alerts. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. We've got a Facebook group as well, soon to become a Facebook page. Obviously, make sure you subscribe to all of our channels as well. Don't worry, Jim, I'm doing this for you, mate.
good lad.
We're available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google. Have I missed any? Any
No.
other podcasting app that you use, give us a follow. Set up some alerts, subscribe, and then feel free, join our Discord. Pez, it's our pinned tweet, isn't it, on
Unsubscribe.
Twitter?
You want what?
It's our pinned tweet, isn't it? On our
Yeah.
We Talk Seahawks Twitter.
He nods as he
Yeah.
doesn't know what that is, but yeah, okay.
There you go.
Fucking what? Right, Josh did a really good segment then, and you're meant to control this shit, you fucking knobhead.
I just want to hear Mitch
Right,
beautifully
you can cut this out. I'm
composed.
going to swear that much. You're going to have to cut this out, you piece of shit. Silly fucking.
Don't.
There you go.
Oh, he dropped it. There
Now
you go.
cut
Now
that
you've
out.
got
was
to
just
cut
tried to do
Now
a
you've
beautiful
got to
sign
cut
off
it.
to our pre-draft series. It's ended with Josh shouting out our social medias and you calling me a see you next Tuesday. All Mitch was trying to do is tell you how much he's enjoyed speaking with me over the past few weeks.
Swap mine and Mitch's bit over, and that's it. Done. There you go. Now start recording again. Come on.
Josh,
Some of us
he's far
have
too
got
busy.
stuff to do.
Josh, he's far too busy for that, mate. He's got to go to bed at 12 o'clock and get up.
Life
to
is
look,
student.
now the jokes come back to me.
Hang on. Wait, it's 9:20. He's got to go and queue up for the shower in a minute, otherwise he gets told off. Let's not forget that.
Although I tell you what, you do make a very good point. I don't know how this has come back to
Go
me.
get in the garden to the well. That's what they do up in.
How the joke is on me here.
He's going to go bathe in that stream at the back of his Tory house. Private fresh spring water, Tory spring water.
He's got a well outside. Just jump in the well. It's all fresh. You can drink it whilst bathing in it.
Oh, I tell you what. You two.
Get a cork in there as well.
I don't know how you dare. Right, Mitch, tell me how much you've enjoyed speaking with me the past few weeks, and then we'll wrap it up.
Well, I just compared myself to Michael Bublé in January, and how much I've enjoyed being on the pod. I expect you to drag me out of my cave, March next year, for a few more if I'm welcome back. But no, it's been brilliant, boys. I've really enjoyed the series, and I really appreciate you having me on. And hopefully, this doesn't become, a rarity. But yeah, thank you very much.
Certainly not,
It's been a
mate.
blast.
You've been absolutely excellent. We're definitely going to get you on after the draft as well to dissect our picks, whoever we take, and have a look back at our big board. So there's plenty of stuff for you to be doing on this podcast. So don't delete
You
your.
can replace James anytime. This man.
And I'll get a camera.
Yeah, oh yeah, please do. People need to see you. I don't think we've actually seen your face properly.
I do hope you've thoroughly enjoyed all of our draft series, our pre-draft series. I hope for whatever reason you've gained some form of insight into the draft, whether, like you say, whether it's through a breakdown of a player or, as Pez has butchered a name for you, whichever way you've gained knowledge through this pre-draft series, I hope you've enjoyed it. And like you say, whoever is donning the Seahawks colours this weekend will be back to talk about them next week. Like I say, with Mitch involved as well and breaking down all of our picks. So that should be really fun as well. I'm really looking forward to it. Hopefully we'll nail this year's draft as much as we did last year's, and we'll have plenty of good players to talk about joining the Seattle Seahawks. But for now and until then, I wish you all a very merry Draftmas. I hope you all enjoy the draft wherever you are, however you're celebrating it. That's good. That Merry Draftmas is genius. That'll be on a fucking card somewhere in the card factory. That anyway.
I'll bang it on one of our We Talk Seahawks t-shirts.
There you are, Merry Draft. Tell you what, I'm fucking VP of social media. They're fucking sacking.
You're definitely not.
Especially after telling me I bathed
You've got
in
to
a
do
river full
social
of
media
toilets.
to be the VP of social media, James. You haven't got the time being the busy student you are.
Yeah, well played. 1-0. Fair enough. Anyway,
That's 2-0 now. You're a bit of a fucking loser.
it's 1-0 to you, 1-0 to him. It's fucking you're not playing on the same team, are you? Anyway,
that next episode is just James and Mitch because we've been sacked.
Yeah,
adios.
So look out for that one. I'm sure the viewership will go through the roof. But for now, stay tuned. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.